One of the best things to see in gacha games is when 4-star units are really strong to the point where they can compete with 5 stars. In Star Rail, I think we're seeing this most recently with the character we're talking about today, which is the Fire Abundance 4-star Gallagher. I feel like now is the perfect time to make this video because with the fan favorite Firefly releasing, a lot of players are finally going to be delving into the break effect playstyle, and Gallagher himself is also going to be featured on her banner. A lot of players are going to be getting Gallagher, maybe even some people reaching the higher Eidolons, so I wanted to explain why he's so good and why he's going to be worth the investment for most players. Alright, to start, let's understand which parts of Gallagher's kit make him so strong. First, we have his ultimate, which is an AoE that inflicts the besotted debuff onto enemies and deals pretty negligible fire damage based on his attack. After using his ultimate, it also enhances his next basic, and because of Gallagher's A4, he also gets an 100% advance forward. This besotted state, so the debuff his ult applies, is expanded upon in his talent, where it says that it increases the break damage the target receives by up to 12% and also heals anyone that attacks a debuffed enemy. And finally, his A6 also makes it so when Gallagher uses his enhanced basic to attack an enemy in the besotted state, he'll heal all other allies. Gallagher's skill is another important part of his kit, and it's also incredibly simple. It just heals a target ally for up to 1600 HP at trace level 10. Now this is a flat heal, so it doesn't care about any of Gallagher's stats except his outgoing healing, which thanks to his A2 also scales off his break effect. We'll get into why this is important a bit later as we go through more of why he's so good. Now one of Gallagher's main issues is he doesn't have a cleanse in his base kit, but at E2 he does gain one on his skill. Once you're past that barrier, and hopefully most players who are pulling Firefly or ruanmei do manage to get at least a few copies of him, Gallagher doesn't really have that many issues as a character. Well, now that we kind of understand how Gallagher works, why is he so strong? Well, a lot of his power comes from his ultimate and his talent. The break damage debuff is obviously very good, as getting even more damage from your sustain is always appreciated. What makes this even more valuable is our other sustains, and even our 5-star ones, really only provide very minimal damage increases for break damage DPSs like boothill and firefly. The advance forward that also comes with Gallagher's ult just helps with a lot of skill point generation, which is pretty useful, especially considering break characters like Firefly and boothill can be very skill point hungry. His enhanced basic from his ultimate also reduces the enemy's attack by 15%, which is something that a lot of people overlook. While it's not the most crazy thing, especially against bosses or against an elite enemy, this can actually be really helpful in keeping your team alive. Now probably the biggest reason Gallagher's gotten even more valuable recently is because of the introduction of Superbreak through our very own Harmony Trailblazer. How Superbreak works, to simplify it, if an enemy is weakness broken and an ally attacks this enemy with Harmony MC's ult buff on, they will do bonus damage based on their break effect stat and the toughness damage they would have done. Gallagher is going to be building a reasonable amount of break effect because of his A2, but more importantly, his ult is fully AoE and does 60 toughness damage, while his enhanced basic does a huge 90 toughness damage. Basically, Gallagher with Harmony MC is going to be doing a lot of damage, and it's not damage you should ignore. With ruanmei Harmony MC, you can easily see 50k or higher enhanced basics from Gallagher on weakness broken targets. If you throw in Gallagher's E6, which gives him even more break effect and weakness break efficiency, we could start approaching 100k damage. This also isn't damage you're going out of your way to reach as well, since Firefly's best team is 100% always going to be ruanmei Harmony MC, and for boothill, this support duo is still going to be one of his better teams as well. This is pretty much the main reason why I think Gallagher is so powerful. You slot him in as a sustain, but he's also taking advantage of the buffs you're using for your break DPS, and he's going to be outputting very good damage. Now specifically in Firefly teams, Firefly can implant fire weakness really easily with both her enhanced skill as well as her technique. Gallagher can once again take advantage of this, since he's going to be able to help your Firefly break enemies so she can do damage more often. Alright, what about how to build him? Well, another great reason to build Gallagher is how ridiculously easy he is to build. All you have to do is slap a healing body, speed boots, and ER rope with some break substats, and you're good to go. He doesn't have a specific 4-piece that benefits him or can help the team too much, so you can just mix and match 2-piece speed, 2-piece healing, or 2-piece break effect. For planar orb and rope, he has a few options. If you're playing him with a normal crit scaling DPS, we have Fleet of Ageless for some attack, or Broken broken Keel for crit damage. For Keel specifically, you barely have to look for effect res substats since he gets 28 in his trace tree, and if you have his E1, he just gets 50% for free. For break DPS like Firefly and Boothill, I would personally just run either Talia or the new Forge relics from 2.3 or Gallagher's own personal stats to help him hit the maximum outgoing healing he can get from his A2 and just some more speed. Playing with Firefly specifically, the extra break from the Forge set will always be active since she will be implanting fire weakness. Kill and Fleet are still kind of useful for break teams since Boothill still does some crit scaling damage, so that attack percent and crit isn't going to complete waste. And then for Firefly, the attack from Fleet can help her hit that attack threshold for her A6 major trace. One other thing that I think a lot of people don't really talk about is how everything is just cheaper when building 4 stars. As someone who comes from Genshin, and I'm sure a lot of the player base did also, we might all be used to having to commit the same amount of resources to build our 4 stars and our 5 stars, when in Star Rail we don't at all. Gallagher also only really needs to level his talent and his skill, since leveling his basic and ultimate only increase the attack percent scaling on it, which is pretty useless. For Lightcones, Gallagher also has a ton of extremely free-to-play friendly options. 5-star Lightcones like Lorcha and Horhor's signatures are pretty good, but not necessary at all. I would mainly be looking at What is Real, Quid Pro Quo, both from the MOC shop, and Multiplication, which is a 3-star Lightcone. What is Real is the best option if you're looking for maximum break effect and healing from Gallagher, while Quid Pro Quo is the best option if you want to help your team with some energy. For me personally, I would use Multiplication though. If you remember when we talked about Gallagher's healing from his skill and his talent, they're both flat amounts, so base stats don't matter for Gallagher at all except for his own survivability, so he's perfectly fine sacrificing the base stats you lose when using a 3-star Lightcone. Multiplication's extra effect advances the wearer forward by 20% every time they basic attack, which is going to be most of the time for Gallagher, so you're effectively giving him a lot more speed, which leads to more turns, which helps with energy, skill points, and just damage. Ultimately, it's up to you which Lightcone you use, as they're all pretty good options, and honestly, if you're just feeling cheap, you can just slap any Abundance Lightcone that you've already leveled and it'll work just fine. Okay, well, we can't really talk about how good Gallagher is without comparing him with the other sustains, more specifically our 5-star ones. In purely sustaining, Gallagher is weaker than all of them, because he just doesn't heal as much as the 5-star guys. But do you actually need this extra sustain? Well, in a break team, Gallagher's heals should be more than enough, since break in itself is sort of a pseudo sustain, especially with ruanmei. Broken enemies can't attack you obviously, and with Boothill at least, and I'm guessing it's going to be the same with Firefly, after enemies are broken, they normally die before they can recover. In a non-break team, I can completely understand if you feel like Gallagher's heals are a bit lacking compared to the 5-star sustains, but regardless, a well-built one should be able to keep your team alive even in the hardest stages of MOC. In terms of offense and how much they provide for the team, in a break team, Gallagher is going to be the premium option. Break damage amplification from his debuff, insane personal damage when paired with ruanmei and Harmony MC, plus very good skill point gen, comes out on top against all the others. Outside of break teams, he's going to basically be like a slightly worse Lorcha. His skill point gen has the potential to be higher than Lorcha's thanks to his action advance, but most likely he will have to press skill occasionally to keep his team alive. If he is able to break an enemy, he will still do decent damage, but this requires the enemy to be fire weak firstly, because he won't have Firefly implanting, and it's also only going to be that initial break since Superbreak isn't going to be in the team. His debuff will be useful in Acheron teams, but generally a preservation like Fushran, Aventurine, or Japad will probably help more if you just have the trend Lightcone. Basically, in break teams, he's going to be the best sustain unit, even surpassing the 5-star guys, but in non-break, he'll still be good, but more so just as a generic healer who has good skill point gen and can do a big hit every so often if they are fire weak. For his teams, we've kind of been talking about this already, but his best teams by far are going to be the ones where he's with break DPS, like Boothill and Firefly. With Harmony MC and ruanmei, you're going to be getting the absolute best out of Gallagher since he's able to do his personal damage. If you opt for a Bronya ruanmei support duo for Boothill, Gallagher is still going to be a good option, but more so just for his break damage debuff on his talent, since he won't be able to do much damage himself. If you want to play a more gimmick team, you can try something like this one, where you don't have a traditional DPS unit, but have everyone, mainly Gallagher and Silverwolf, doing insane amounts of damage just with Superbreak. And for the other DPS units, you can basically just slot Gallagher in as a generic sustain. Just be aware he won't be as impressive in these teams compared to his break focused ones. And finally, what about Gallagher's future? Is he going to still be relevant as more more characters release? Well, obviously we can't be sure, but Gallagher will most likely, unfortunately, eventually get pushed out as the best sustain for break teams. This could take us years, or it could literally just be with the next character they announced in 2.5, Jiao Chu, who is a nihility character, but his description has a lot of emphasis on healing and medicine. So maybe he's a debuffer who can also somewhat keep your team alive. If this does end up being true, then depending on how strong his debuffs are and how competent he is as a healer, he could be a lot better than Gallagher in break teams. On a positive note though, while right now break DPS like Firefly and Boothill really need ruanmei in their teams, so you can't really play both of them at the same time without making one of their teams really scuffed, once more supports that do synergize with break release and ruanmei isn't as essential, you could run Boothill on one side and Firefly the other side. So one team gets the new shiny 5-star break sustain and the other team uses Gallagher. And that's pretty much about everything I wanted to say about Gallagher's strengths right now. His skill point gen, break damage debuff, personal damage in break teams, as well as how easy it is to build him, not only makes Gallagher a very good general sustain unit and one of the best 4-stars in the game, but also the premier option for break teams, especially with the upcoming Firefly. If you want a new sustain to slot in your teams, or you really want to maximize your break teams, I would highly recommend putting some resources into building Gallagher. With that said, I hope this video was helpful. I'll also be releasing another video about ruanmei in a few days, so look forward to that one, and I'll see you guys next time.